So what the hell are the Indiana Pacers? They're 3-3 at the moment. They've had some wins where they look really good. Their previous win against the Bulls, their exciting win in the first game of the season over the Mavericks that went to overtime. But they've had some stinkers too, man. They just lost to the Bucks, and they were trying to find some sort of way to defend Giannis in their three-point shooting. They couldn't do it. They lost to the Brooklyn Nets, who have actually been kind of competitive this season because they have a good coach. But still, 3-3, and they're not really... They don't look horrible, they don't look amazing, so let's talk about them. Here's what I will say. When I have watched Indiana this season, and I haven't seen every single game, the first thing I've noticed is it's a lot of Monta Ellis. Monta is dribbling the ball a lot. He's the one running the offense sometimes. He's the one dribbling the ball up the floor a lot. And I saw this in the Brooklyn Nets game, and in about a 4-minute stretch, Monta Ellis took 2 long two-pointers and he turned the ball over. And I think he also had one where he didn't finish well at the rim. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much Monta Ellis in a nutshell. His efficiency has actually creeped up this season, but he's averaging a whopping 10 points. Besides that, he's a non-factor from 3 at 27%. I just don't think Monta Ellis is a good player. Under Rick Carlisle, being able to run pick and rolls with Dirk, yeah, he was pretty decent. Now, could you somewhat replicate that with Miles Turner? Yeah, I think there's actually some life there, because Miles is also a really good shooter as a big man. Not the three-point shooter that Dirk is, but, someone who the defense, if they leave him open, he can definitely knock it down. So I think that's one way you could help out Monta Ellis a bit more, is to run him in pick and rolls with Miles Turner. But also, with Ellis having the ball so much, Jeff Teague, man. 32% from the field, which is god-awful. 21% from 3. Jeff Teague can't buy a basket to save his life right now. And, it's a huge adjustment for Teague. If you're sharing the ball between him and Ellis, Teague wasn't really that in Atlanta. He was the guy having the ball all the time, being able to run pick and rolls and be the guy for their offense. Horford and Millsap did a lot too, but, Teague was... The role he had in Atlanta was larger than the one he has had so far for the Indiana Pacers. Asking him to play off ball with Monta. Interestingly enough, CJ Miles, the backup shooting guard, is doing great right now. 15 points a game. Shooting over 50% from 3. I would start CJ right now over Monta, because I think he provides you more spacing. He allows Jeff Teague to be the real point guard of this team, having the ball in his hands more, hopefully allowing him to be more comfortable, and then that can just help out your offense. As for Paul George, he's been great. He's efficient, which is good, because that was the one criticism you could throw at PG, was his efficiency. At the moment of 48%, you cannot do that at all. Paul George has been great, and among what I've seen from the Pacers so far, their best play is Paul George, Paul George, Miles Turner, pick and rolls and pick and pops. Of course, the biggest game, or the biggest moment for Miles up to this point, was that three-pointer he hit on the Mavericks, and it started from a Paul George drive. And to really sum up how I feel the Pacers' offense has been so far, in that Dallas Mavericks overtime, Monta Ellis had the ball way too damn much, and he was doing his Monta Ellis thing, which is a whole bunch of non-productive dribbling. And with about 7 seconds left to go on the shot clock, he zips it down to Paul George in the corner, and in those 7 seconds, Paul George gets to the rim and scores, and just basically bails out the offense. Now, in that same situation, if CJ Miles was in over Monta Ellis to give them some more spacing, and then Jeff Teague was running something, or if you just gave it to Paul George with 15 seconds left to go, you probably would have had a better play, but Paul George still bailed you out. And against the Brooklyn Nets, the one play I specifically remember was Paul George just getting it on the right-hand side, doing a pick and pop with Miles Turner. It was a wide-open two-pointer. That's their best player right now. Now, I will say, Thad Young might be, he's surprising me a little bit with his three-point shooting, because he really hasn't been a shooter for a couple of years now. He's been very willing to shoot threes this year, as he's taken at least one per game, and he's actually shooting 39%. Now, he has had 3 games where he hasn't made any, but still, if Thad Young can be a good enough three-point shooter to where you can provide that spacing, then that's awesome. Because that was my fear with Thad Young. I was like, man, him and Monta Ellis in the same lineup, that offense could get really clustered very quickly if someone's driving inside and neither one of these guys can shoot. But if Thad Young can shoot, then that helps you out. So if Thad Young can keep this up, and then you get CJ Miles into the starting lineup to provide more shooting, now you're looking at a team that I'm a bit more happy with, because now Jeff Teague can be the point guard, Paul George can do his thing, and the defense can't frickin' collapse on him because Monta Ellis sucks. Well, he sucks from 3 at least. Now, that's one way to fix up the offense. Another thing I will say is their second unit. Maybe if Monta Ellis goes there, he could be a bit more of a scorer for them there. He'll be going up against second units. Maybe he'll be better. Aaron Brooks has actually been a good scorer and shooter for them off the bench. There was a play where Al Jefferson was posting up and he zipped a pass across the court to Aaron Brooks, who dropped a three-pointer in. I think Brooks can be a fine backup point guard for you. And I actually think he might have some opportunities to play off of Monta Ellis well because he's a three-point shooter. But I mentioned Al Jefferson a second ago. He was the other addition. It's not going very well for Big Al right now. 5 points, inefficient as all hell. At this point, where Al Jefferson is in his career, I think he's playing the right role for them. But, I mean, if he's not going to be good anymore, then that's just going to suck, to put it point blank. Also, Al Jefferson can't play defense, and that's where we're getting to the other side of things. Defensively, I mean, right now they're 28th in opponent points per game, 26th in defensive rating. I don't know which one of those is more important, but neither one of them are good for them. Look, Jeff Teague's a downgrade defensively from George Hill. It's just a fact. I mean, if you go down my Twitter, I got the pick and roll play with Jeff Teague and Al Jefferson, and they screw it up big time against Rondo and Taj Gibson. That's just going to happen. You traded George Hill and you got Jeff Teague, so you got to accept it. Monta Ellis is also not good defensively. Al Jefferson's not good defensively. Now, Thad Young, Paul George, and Miles Turner, okay, now we're a bit better, but still, if you have a number of bad defensive players on your team, especially one of them being your point guard, you're going to be in for some tough times. Now, one thing I actually didn't think about with their defense, but then when I finally saw it live, I realized it. Paul George and Thad Young can actually be pretty switchy when it comes to pick and rolls because they both can defend multiple positions and they're pretty physically built, so they can handle that. So that's cool in terms of your forwards and your front court, because Miles Turner is also a decent shot blocker. He's up to 3 a game right now. But if your backcourt sucks at defense, that's just good luck. So if there's a trade they need to make, it would be to get a defensive shooting guard, defensive point guard, to play backup, defensive wing. Get some defense, guys. Holy hell. Now, they did have one guy in Solomon Hill, but with the amount of money the Pelicans gave him, I don't blame Indiana for not keeping him, especially because I don't think he's been that good so far for New Orleans, but that was a guy who played some defense for him last season. So I do think they need to make some additions. If you could, like I said, a defensive something. Defensive guard, defensive wing. Hell, a defensive big man, because Al Jefferson might not be playing 30 games into the season. Something like that. Also, something that could add you some more versatility, perhaps to go with Paul George at the small ball 4. If you can get some sort of wing who can help you out. I have no idea who would actually be available, but it's an idea. But in terms of just what they have at the moment, I would like to see CJ Miles starting over Monta Ellis, just to provide more spacing and hopefully make Jeff Teague just a little more comfortable. I do like what I'm getting from Thad Young, even though the rebounding is a little disappointing, but I think Thad is still a plus for you on both sides of the floor, especially if he's hitting those threes. And again, with this team, the one thing we can say is they have one of the 10 best players in the league in Paul George, so they are liable to win any game. And with the season Miles Turner's having as a shooter and as a scorer inside as well, he's been really good, so again, I do feel a Paul George, Miles Turner pick and roll game is damn good. The rest of the team ain't so damn good. And just out of curiosity, I went and Googled George Hill. You want to know the season he's having for the Utah Jazz right now? He's putting up 20 points on 52% shooting and 44% from 3. And he's a good defensive point guard. Imagine if the Pacers had that right now. He wouldn't be averaging 20 on them, of course, but that 3-point shooting and the defense, oh well, they made their bed and they have to figure it out. Anyway, Indiana, it's going weird. I think there are some ways that they could improve it. Might need to make a trade. Monta Ellis sucks. Or he doesn't suck, he just, well, I don't like him. Anyway, I'm done.